mic is on. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, please go ahead and throw a message into the chat box just so I have some understanding that somebody is out there and hearing me before I just start continue to talk and ramble into the microphone. But today, this is episode 4 of Watching the Watchers. Again, my name is Robert Gruler. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Arizona. And what we're talking about today is the executive order that was issued this afternoon by Governor Doug Ducey. This has some pretty serious ramifications for the way that we live and operate around the world, in particular in Arizona, because Governor Ducey is our governor. And so today what I want to do is run through the specifics of this actual executive order. Like I said, it got released today. And so you can see here, I've read through it. There's a lot of kind of information in it. Ultimately, I want to run through it and give you my kind of opinions on what it means and how this is going to impact a lot of the things that we're doing throughout the world today. But let's dive into it. So as you know, the entire world is responding to COVID-19, and there's kind of been this real slow drip, this slow tightening of a lot of what we do on our day-to-day lives. So they started by telling you to do some social distancing, but there was no real mandatory kind of restrictions on some of our freedoms, some of our ability to do certain things. And then slowly those sort of opportunities have been kind of whittling down. And so we're seeing now that certain things started to kind of trickle close. So we started to see school closures. The governor came out and issued a state of emergency. Then around March 17th, the CDC issued some new restrictions, and we started to see that any activities that didn't involve anybody who was that involved groups of 10 or more people, all of those things were recommended that you stop doing those things. Anything that has a group bigger than 10 needs to be nipped. On March 19th, then we saw that there were some additional and kind of a little bit more serious restrictions. They actually, Governor Ducey came out and issued Executive Order 2020-09, which closed the restaurants, closed the gyms, and closed the movie theaters, which was a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, that was huge sectors of the economy were just getting shut down. And, we all were kind of watching, what was going to be happening next. We saw other orders throughout the United States where they're shutting down other states. We saw California had a kind of shelter in place. We just saw today that I think in Florida, they're doing the same thing. Various other big cities, New York, Chicago, are all sort of trickling closed, and they all have these shelter in place, stay at home orders now that Arizona and Governor Ducey just wasn't ordering. He actually had a press conference where he was, somebody asked him, hey, everybody else in the entire country is doing this. Why are you not doing it? And the response from him was, well, it's just not the right time. Arizona is a different place than a lot of these other cities, and I do tend to agree with him that it is different. Our density's a little bit different than you'd find in LA or New York City or Chicago, and we've got some different demographics, different space. So it was curious. I was going to see how long he could kind of hold out. And then today he finally made the decision. He said that we are going to do a shelter in place. And so he released an order, Executive Order 2020-18. I want to kind of run through a little bit of it with you. We've got somebody from Northern Arizona here. Just want to say shout out to you. Thanks for tuning in today. If you are watching the show, do me a favor, just drop a line in the chat just so that I know that you're here, you're engaged. It helps me to make sure that the stream is working and that I'm not just talking into a microphone that's shut off. So I appreciate that. So let's take a look at Executive Order 2020-18. And here's what we've got. So thank you for responding in the chat. We've got Ahan, AHAN. Hello, good to see you. Here's what we've got going on. So here is the actual executive order. And quick reminder: when you drop a message, it should pop up here. I'm not sure if it's going to pop up on the screen. Like I said, this is new software, trying to figure this out. So if you drop a chat, it should pop up right there. But let me run you through this executive order. So, as is typical in a lot of executive orders, what you see here, this first kind of page, is a lot of kind of laying the framework for why we're doing what we're doing. So the governor needs to justify this. Okay, what he's doing by asking people to shelter in place is really a big deal. It's a big sort of limitation on your personal freedoms, your right to assemble, your right to travel, to engage in commerce. These are some major constitutional issues that we fought many wars over to protect these types of freedoms. And so when a government or a governor or anybody in a position of power comes out and says, well, we're going to take away a lot of those things. You're not allowed to leave your home anymore. You're not allowed to go to work. You have a private business, and now we're going to take all of that from you. So the question becomes, well, where does that authority come from? Where does that power come from? And so on the first page here of the executive order, you're going to see what the governor is doing is actually delineating sort of a history of where all this stuff came from. He's really explaining that a lot of this was kind of a slow boil, and it started really sort of around March 11th when the governor issued the declaration of the public health state of emergency. And then I kind of have already gone through a lot of the background on how this progressed, but I just got a notification here. It looks like my business partner actually hopped on the call, Ryan Cummings. So let me see if I can switch over to him. I do hear the audio. Ryan, are you there? Can you hear us? All right, so let me see. Let me get another quick test, and there you are. I think the audience should hear you now. So you've had a chance, and we see your picture on there. Looks very cute. Let me ask you. So you've read through this? I know it just came out a couple hours ago.
Yeah. So I've had a chance to read through most all of it.
All right. And any initial thoughts from your perspective? I know you and I have not even had really the chance to talk about it, but what are your kind of initial feelings about it?
Well, so I think a lot of this comes from some of his play of it just being kind of like I just heard you say it, kind of a slow boil type of thing. It's just and I see people on social media. I know you see people on social media that I'm sure are have talked about it, and they're just feeling as though Governor Ducey's not doing enough. So I think this was his action to kind of say, hey, look, I'm going a little bit further now and officially issuing this stay-at-home order. It's interesting, though, because basically what it does is it says, you're supposed to stay at home except unless you're an essential business. And this was back to his order 2020-09, which designated what was essential business. And there was a lot. Healthcare and public health operations, which I think is pretty obvious. That should be on there. There is human service operations, so long-term care facilities, residential settings, things like that. I think that's another one that's pretty important. Then we've got the essential infrastructure operations covering sale, construction, building management, those types of things, which again is just making sure everything is moving as it's supposed to be. That's also going to take care of the roadways, essential government functions, so police, 911, fire, child welfare personnel, and then you get to subsection E, which covers all the other essential businesses and operations. And I think this is where a lot of people still are going to have their issue with, because it's a big group. So stores that sell groceries and medicine, I don't think anybody's going to have a big problem with that. You got to go get food, you got to get your medicine, those things. Food, beverage, and agriculture, people that are manufacturing these things. Anybody that's cultivating, the foods, that's producing the foods, beverage, those are all essential businesses. Now, the outdoor recreation activities, that may be where some people are going to start with it. And again, because it says, outdoor recreation area, parks, sites, trails, provides opportunities for outdoor recreation. They're asking that you state in there that you maintain that social distancing. So a distance of 6 feet away from other people. And I think that's where a lot of the rest of the community having, kind of the issue with, is because that's just not happening. I know, I'm here at home with the kids. If we go on a walk, we've seen other families that, are just socializing, families in the same block. That's not the social distancing. That's not what's happened. So they go through all of that. It was actually interesting because this kind of prompted me to read '09. I hadn't really read '09 fully until it came to this. And as we get going down the list, as we keep going, so anybody that provides charitable and social services, media, gas station businesses needed for transportation. Again, I don't think that's going to be at issue too much. Financial institutions, hardware and supply stores. So, again, the problem that comes in is that if you're going to these things, non-essential businesses. So, if I just decided that, I wanted a tape measure, I go to Home Depot, shouldn't be doing that. But under the newest order, I think it could be allowed because I'm traveling for essential business. Critical trades, post offices, again, I don't think those are anything that they've got problems with. The educational institutions is actually listed in there with essential businesses, but it's got listed under there that it's except the schools are ordered closed through April 10th. The newest order takes everything through April 30th, but I believe there was another order out there that basically shut down the schools for the remainder of the year. As we continue down the essential businesses, I think where people start getting a little, start and saying why is this open is when you get professional and personal services. So you get to something like professional services such as legal services, that can be, very much so an essential business.
Yeah.
I know, our office is still open. The criminal justice system is still somewhat working, although I think they finally shut down the courts at this point in time. But then you get things like personal hygiene services with additional sanitation precautions recommended for businesses. So now you get something to where you say, okay, what does that mean? So personal hygiene services. So can I go to my nail salon? Can I go to my hairdresser? Can I go get a massage? These are all things that are inherently difficult to have social distancing, at least with one other human being, let alone if there's multiple chairs there. And I think that's where a lot of people are having the issue and saying, guys, just stay at home. Like, don't go out, don't go do these things. I think, the governor's finally kind of putting this out there, and it's a 5-page order that kind of goes through everything, but it's just, I think there's going to be a lot of people still that say this is still not enough because it doesn't just say stay at home. It's supposed to stay at home, stay healthy, stay connected. It's got a good tagline with it, but kind of much like anything, it's just, I think it's just more of kind of the name of what we had, and I think a lot of people in Arizona are looking for it to say, hey, look, just tell us we have to shut down. Like, just tell us that we can't conduct order. Don't leave us in this limbo stage where we don't really know. Am I going to be violating an order? There's also no ramifications for this. If you're found out, having a party at a park, it doesn't say that you're going to have that there's any penalty for it. It just says, hey, don't do it, please.
Yeah, and that was that really stood out to me. I mean, I was kind of shocked about that. I mean, there is no teeth at all. I read through the new order, and I made a note basically that said lots of warnings. So I scrolled down as you were speaking. I was kind of running through a lot of the different things that you were talking about, and so to your original point, the initial order, the 2020-12, which basically defined what essential services were, is massive. It's huge. I was going through every single paragraph, and I mean, you've got almost everything is on there, and even the stuff that's not, you can kind of make an argument that it falls within one of the other categories somewhere. I mean, everybody can make an argument, and we're also in a position where, I mean, I've seen, we work out at the same gym. I got a letter from the gym that said basically, hey, add us to the essential services list because we fit into some of those categories, things like hygiene and services and, personal services. And so they wanted to be added to that list because of course they're being closed and, they're in a world of hurt as a result of that. But so you've got that, right? You've got a lot of kind of murky water on what falls into this category. It's very hard to even, make that determination. But then when you go into the new executive order and you go down to page, where is it? Let's see. Here it is. Let's see. Yeah, paragraph 14, if you look at the last paragraph, it says prior to any enforcement action being taken to enforce this order in accordance with the law, a person shall be notified and given an opportunity to comply. So it's like, okay, that sounds like a warning to me. I mean, I think that basically says, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. You've been warned. Go comply. So I mean, if that's as bad as it's going to get, I don't know that a lot of people are going to comply. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the hope of it is, is more and more businesses kind of take a step back. That's really what I'm gathering from this. But it's a difficult spot. It's one of those things where, and again, it's real easy to sit back and criticize and say, or play that armchair quarterback. But I think it's one of those things where a lot of people are just saying, like, look, if we would have taken a strong force at this and really kind of shut things down for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that, we would have had a lot better idea on kind of where this thing was taking us. But the problem is because it's just been the slow boil or the slow drip, we're not really getting anywhere. We're not gaining any traction with this. We're losing out. There's too many people that are out, and that's why it's on this. Really, what this looks like to me is it does add a little more teeth, to some of the previous orders that were there. But this also then, I think goes in with kind of the president's orders, and he says that this executive order will be in effect April 30th. So I know a lot of the other orders kind of had it tying off around the 10th or so, the 12th, something like that. This basically extends it through the entire month of April. But again, it's kind of one of those things. If you would have just gotten in on front of it and March 13th said, hey, boom, everything's shut down. You really can only go out for essential type of stuff. That's I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, that may have been the best course of action. But again, it's one of those things where all we can do is just look back on this now and say, did we do enough? Did we do enough soon enough?
Yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, it's always easy. I see a lot of people on social media and the news and commentators kind of blasting everybody, but I've got a lot of sympathy for a lot of the people trying to work through this. Even the courts, even the prosecutor's office. A lot of people are really trying to wrap their heads around this. You and I included. As small business owners, as attorneys, as people representing, other people who are relying on us to be their sort of their rock, their guiding light. And we're looking to the courts, we're looking to the governor, we're looking to all these other authority figures, and they have not even been very good at getting us some level of certainty that we can pass along to our clients. So it's been frustrating kind of across the board. But you're right. You did mention that the final line, the final item was this order shall be in effect until April 30th, 2020. So sort of getting in a line with some of the national orders that we're seeing from the administration.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that was kind of the big takeaway on this. And it's a little bit more. It says shelter in place, stay. If you don't have to go out, don't go out. So I mean, hopefully we'll see that. I'm seeing it a little bit more. I've been out a couple of times. I had to come to our office to pick up a few things, so I can work from home for some stuff. But that's that's essentially a lot of stores are getting lighter on the cars, but I'm still seeing a lot of stores that have just a ton of people there, and it looks just like business as usual, which is kind of the problem.
Yeah, it's going to be very curious to see what what people's responses are. To me, it has kind of felt like people have already almost voluntarily locked down, kind of just made that decision internally without a government order requiring them to do so. But at the same time, like you said, there are still a lot of people out. I mean, there's still certain areas that I'll go. I'll be kind of surprised that so many people are still out and about. But anything else, man? I didn't want to keep you all night. I just wanted to get your initial thoughts on it.
No, man, and I appreciate that. I think it's I mean, again, I think we're taking steps in the right direction. It's just are we doing it quick enough? Are we moving quick enough? We're going to be able to combat this thing, or what's going to happen? And only time will tell. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, all right, my friend. Well, thanks for checking in. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. I got a couple questions and a couple more things to run through, but we'll let you get back to your family. Thanks for hopping on.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, buddy. All right. So when we go back over to, I want to thank Ryan for hopping on. Let's switch over here. There we go. Okay. So a couple things I wanted to point out that Ryan and I didn't get to, but some concerns came up. So when this order came across and we got notified that the governor was going to be doing this thing, some people at our office did have some concerns. They said, look, I have an essential function. Obviously, I work at a law firm, and we need to make sure that we have people there. And so how do we get to work? What if we get stopped by law enforcement and they say, you can't go in there? You're not allowed to go to work because the governor has issued a shelter-in-place order. The answer to that is that you are free to leave. We were going to draft up a letter for our employees to say, hey, they work at a criminal defense law firm. We're very clearly essential. We have people who are in custody of the government, and we need to make sure that they have counsel on the outside. And we wanted to sort of be very clear that our office was going to continue. The continuity existed. And we were looking through the actual executive order, and there is no requirement to have anything in writing. So the governor actually said there it's on page 2. So let me get there. That right here, no person shall be required to provide documentation or proof of their activities to justify their activities under the order. So that's a good thing. They're not going to be pulling you over and asking for your papers. It's not going to be one of those situations, at least here in Arizona. I know there are other states that are really getting aggressive on preventing people from coming in or out of their borders. They are checking papers kind of at the ports of entry with different people coming through. I think that was happening in Rhode Island. They were checking people from New York City, people who were leaving. They were actually, boarding buses and things, looking at documents and asking people, why are you here? What are you doing in our state? Because they're trying to, prevent people from fleeing New York City and bringing in the coronavirus to transfer over into, Rhode Island. So it's kind of an interesting time. As Ryan mentioned, as we looked through here, when you go through this order, there really are no teeth. I mean, there are no penalties that are delineated in this order. It doesn't say that this is going to be charged as a crime, or this is going to be a class 1 misdemeanor, or there's going to be any additional penalties for violating the order. Basically, all it says is what I mentioned previously, that it will be something that you basically get warned about. You're going to be warned, given an opportunity to comply, and that's going to be the end of it. Now, the governor can come out and release a new executive order and says that they are going to start prosecuting these things, or they're going to make some adjustments in terms of the governor's power. Governor does have a lot of power under here, and he goes through and he delineates it. He says, as he's going through here, he kind of defines where all of the power comes from pursuant to ARS 26303, 36787. I have issued a declaration of a public health state of emergency, which opens up a lot of additional tools for the governor to use in order to deal with this thing. So, kind of a wild day, a moment in history. Arizona has a shelter-in-place lockdown order that we are all going to have to be complying with. And it is important to note that essential activities does include constitutionally protected activities such as speech and religion, and any legal or court process provided that is conducted in a manner that provides appropriate physical distancing. So courts are going to keep processing cases. They're going to keep charging people with crimes. And so that sort of cog is going to continue forward. But a lot of other activities are going to diminish out, are going to drop down now by executive order throughout all of April, all the way through April 30th. And so that is it's going to be a big change for the next 30 days. So we've got a couple questions, and yes, we will make sure that we run through those questions here at the end. I wanted to take a quick moment and just show you some of the responses. So we ran through the executive order. I think Ryan's right. There is this idea that, yeah, we have an order, but are people going to keep complying with it? Are we going to actually do enough here to mitigate what's happening with the coronavirus? Just because we have an executive order now, we don't know. We're going to see what the response is from the rest of our citizens throughout Arizona. But the order, to Ryan's point, one of Ryan's main kind of, I think, qualms with what's happening is that there's a lot of murkiness. There's a lot of unknowns, uncertainty. And so this was funny. I was following this today pretty closely. So we have Mayor Kate Gallego, who is the mayor of Phoenix. And I was following her on Twitter, and I actually saw that it's interesting. She released a letter today, actually. Where is it? Yeah, right here. So her and a number of other mayors, so mayors from Tolleson, Flagstaff, Fountain Hills, Guadalupe, Superior, Winslow, Tucson, and then, of course, Mayor Gallego from Phoenix, and, of course, El Mirage. So all of these different mayors draft this letter, and they send it over to Governor Ducey, and they say, hey, we think that you should basically do what he did. Their letter is dated on March 30th, so that goes over to the governor. And today at 2 p.m., the governor came out and issued that executive order. And so they kind of, the governor did essentially what they were asking him to do. We want you to shut down the government. So they did do that. And then Mayor Gallego comes out again and says that essentially it's not sufficient. She says here in this tweet, the stay-at-home order starting at 5 p.m. tomorrow, it's insufficient if he does not narrow his list of essential services. Essential services are not golf and beauty salons. They are first responders, grocers, pharmacists, and a few others. So that is, I think, kind of a common critique. You can see here there's a lot of people who are agreeing with him. They're saying, that firearm and ammunition stores should be on that list of being closed, which I vehemently disagree with. I've got a lot of opinions on that. But, these are people who sort of the public opinion is dividing into two different areas right now. There's a big group of people who say everybody should be on lockdown. You should be charged with a crime if you are not on, or not complying with those rules. And then on the other side, you have people who are saying, look, man, this is my life. This is my freedom. This is my property. This is my business. These are my rights. And you requiring me to shelter in place is a real bad sort of infringement on those rights. There's a lot of merit to that argument as well. So the question is going to become, what is the response going to be? I think by and large, a lot of people were already doing a lot of what the governor is talking about in his order. And so, the full order is available on the governor's website. My takeaway on it, I think, it's probably a step in the right direction. I'm glad that people are not being charged with crimes for not following following the requirements of the order. We already charge people with too many crimes as it is, and so to arrest people, gosh, I saw a story. I didn't clip it for today because we just went live very quickly, but there was a story in, I forget what state it is. I'm going to cover it on Wednesday. I've already clipped it in there, but an actual pastor, somebody who runs a church, if I'm correct, was actually arrested for continuing to run services during the government shutdown, by the quarantine, the shelter in place order, which to me is extremely, extremely dangerous. He was being arrested and charged with a crime. So I want to read through that and study that a little bit further and see what actually happened there. But we're going to be talking about that on Wednesday on Watching the Watchers. We're actually going to move the show up a little bit. We're going to move it from starting at 4 o'clock, which will be a lot of fun, because I was starting it at 7, and there were some people on the East Coast that I didn't have the opportunity to actually interview them. So what happened last week with Andre, he was asleep. I didn't realize he was on East Coast time, and so I was asking him to call in at 10:30. He was already long asleep at that time. So we've got that rescheduled, and we're going to have him on this show on Wednesday, but it's going to be 4:30 Arizona time. So we're going to start the show at 4. Andre is going to call in at 4:30, and we'll just do the show live that way, much the same way that Ryan called in today. I think the software is working. I think I kind of have it figured out a little bit. So that's all that I had. I wanted to show you, some of the response. Mayor Kate Gallego. We also had, that was her original letter. We've got a lot of people who are saying that it just did not go far enough. Phoenix, Tucson mayors say governor's stay-at-home order does not go far enough. So people are not, they're not happy about it. I think basically anytime anybody in this thing makes a decision, you're going to have critics on both sides. But I think a lot of what we need to do is just take some personal responsibility for what's going on in our own lives, shelter in place, if that's something that we think we need to do. I for one do. All right, so let's see here. We have some questions from a couple different people. Let's swap over here. Let's jump into the chat and let's see what we've got. All right, so one of the original, so a question, is this order mandatory or is it a suggestion? And a couple people had that question. So let me show you some actual language from the order, which means that it is mandatory. So here's what we've got. So we've got some language, and this is something that you kind of pick up on when you go to law school and when you read a lot of these things. You're looking for this type of language, and here we have it. So it's the difference between shall and may. Let's see. So it's on page 2. What is the difference between a shall and a may when we're talking about legal language? It's a really big difference. One is discretionary, one is not. And so specifically here on page 2 under bullet point 2, it says here that all individuals under this policy, point 2, under this policy, all individuals in the state of Arizona shall limit their time away from their place of residence or property, and then it lists out some exceptions. So when you're talking about that type of language, that means it's mandatory. It's shall. You don't have discretion. We see this a lot in all sorts of different laws. Sometimes it will say may. May means you can do it. It's discretionary. A judge may do something or may not. A good example of this in Arizona, under Arizona law, is for criminal speeding offenses. So when we talk about criminal speeding in Arizona, we have regular civil speeding, but we also have criminal speeding. And there are certain things that a judge has discretion on related to those cases, things like allowing driving school or dismissing charges that in other cases they do not have because it says shall. Their privileges are sort of confined by shall, whereas in other situations where it says may, they have a lot more leniency, a lot more discretion. But here it says shall, and it says all individuals in the state of Arizona shall limit. So it's pretty definitive. It's not something that you have a lot of leeway on. But at the same time, as we discussed with Ryan, there's not a lot of teeth here. There's just simply not a lot of ramifications. So if you do break the order and they come through and they give you a warning and they say, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity to comply, you're in violation of the law, but we ask that you now go through and comply with it, that's just a warning. I mean, there's no teeth in here that say, we're going to take you to jail, or we're going to charge you with a crime, or it's going to be a petty offense, you're going to owe a fine of $250 or something like that. There's just nothing in the order that says anything like that, which is interesting. Now, a lot of people they follow the law just to follow the law. This is an order. It's going to, a substantial amount of the population is going to agree and just follow the order to begin with. But there will be a segment of the population who just doesn't matter what the order is. Even if the order came back and said, we're going to put you in jail for 10 days, there are still people who would be out there and working because they've got more on the line. If their business goes under, if they lose, their ability to be with their family or take care of their kids, people make decisions. And so suddenly, supporting their business or continuing to work is less pain. It's less risk. It's less of a liability than anything that the government would be imposing on them. So you have to consider that. And a lot of people are going to be having that conversation in their minds here pretty soon. And the longer that this quarantine goes on, I think the longer that people are going to get kind of fed up with it. And these types of orders are just going to sort of lose their teeth because you're going to have huge segments of the population who just say, yeah, we understand that there's a virus out there, but we have to get back to work. And we're going to do that. So we'll see what happens. A couple other questions. So yeah, it is a mandatory order. It is a requirement. It says shall. You do need to follow the order because it is now the law. The governor passed this. It's an executive order. It is in effect. I'm sorry, it's not in effect today. It's in effect at 5 p.m. starting tomorrow. So keep that in mind. Another question from A. Han. How do you guys grade Trump on his actions to the pandemic? And so Ryan's not on the phone anymore, but this is a great question, and it's a political one. It's a political question. In constitutional law, you talk about political questions, and the courts really don't want to make decisions on political questions. Now, I am not the courts. I am an independent person, and so my opinions don't reflect the opinions of the firm. but I've had mixed opinions on what we've seen out of the federal government. By and large, I'm not a fan of the government in general, so I just typically don't trust what they are telling us or what they are recommending that we do. I just personally am not of the mindset that they have our best interests in mind most of the time. I do think that there are good people in government. There's a big reason I started watching The Watchers is because I'm just generally distrustful of the government by and large, whether it's police officers, prosecutors, politicians, judges. I tend to think that people can be shaken off of their core of integrity a little bit more frequently than maybe some other people think that. And anybody involved in the government, I've just got a lot of issues with it. So by and large, I have not been super impressed with what we've been seeing out of any of our government at all. I think I think that there's been a lot of reactionary sort of decisions being made. I think Trump's original response to it was inappropriate. I did not sort of think that he could use his muster to defeat the virus. So his initial responses, I think, in early January, February, were sort of nonchalant, really just kind of lackadaisical. He was kind of just saying, oh, it's just a virus. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. America's great. America's the best. Don't worry about it. And a lot of people were very worried about it, myself included. I was seeing the response out of China. I was seeing what was happening throughout the world. And I didn't think that Trump's message matched the tone that the rest of the world was interested in hearing. People were concerned about it. And so Trump's ability to communicate, I think his skill set was not well suited to address the citizens' concerns about a pandemic or a virus sweeping through the world. It was just not a good match. Now, I have seen some major shifts in the Trump administration that I have been appreciative of. The one that really stood out to me was when he had all of those CEOs and all of the executives from all of the different companies on the lawn at the White House, and he was just kind of parading them one after the other and explaining what each one of their contributions was going to be. I thought that was extremely effective and very powerful. Here we had the president who was saying, look, the government can do so much, but I want to explain to you that we have the CEO of CVS, the CEO of Walgreens and Target, and all of the, Sonora Quest and all of these different laboratories and healthcare providers. And he had them all on the stage right behind him. And he was saying one after the other, this person, what are you going to do? And they walk up and they say, hey, at Walgreens, we've got this. We've got, 2,000 locations, 5,000 pharmacies, this and this and this, and just rifling off all of the different resources that each one of these independent private company or, private companies who are in the private sector, all the skills and all the resources and all the capabilities that they had, which was very reassuring and something that I think a lot of people forget. This country has a lot of very, very powerful forces in the private sector who, as we're seeing, can really just ramp up production and solve a lot of these problems. I mean, I haven't been around a whole lot, but I haven't seen any type of sort of unified momentum from the entire country coalescing together and getting everybody rowing in the same direction, rowing on the same page to beat this thing. The manifestation of energy and willpower has been, I've been kind of like dumbstruck by what I've been seeing. You've got these different companies now who are, creating these tests that can come up with a response in 5 minutes. And, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it was 5 days to get a response. And now we're at 5 minutes, and it's in the form of a toaster. You've got Dyson, creating these ventilators. Elon and GM and all these different companies are really kind of rallying to solve and beat this thing. So I've got a lot of faith in that. I've got a lot more faith in that than I do in some bureaucrats in the government anywhere solving the problem. I think that the private sector, private citizens, individuals are going to be responsible for helping and solving this thing, whereas the government, I don't have a lot of faith in them. I am very pleased that they've moved quickly on financial support, because they have shut off the spigot for all of us small business owners. They have literally said you cannot do business anymore. Restaurants are closed, bars are closed, people can't go out, you can't do anything that you want to do anymore. And so the government has said, we're taking this all away from you. So I do believe that it's important for them to compensate us for that taking. And and it sounds like they're doing it. We're going to continue to see what they're willing to do to support small businesses. I know a lot of the big businesses are going to be taken care of as well. But we're going to see what we've got, that trickles down to us, which, in my opinion, of course, is the backbone of the entire country. So it's a great question. It's a very complicated answer. I have been happy with some of the developments. I think directionally the Trump administration is moving in the right area, but the initial response was very lackluster in my opinions. Okay, so a couple of other questions. Will you represent independent journalists that might get detained while out filming during the order? That's a great question. I would absolutely be willing to talk about that and explore that. I'm always hesitant to just kind of give blanket get out of jail free card. Will represent you for anything. So I want to couch that just a little bit. But certainly, I mean, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the ability to congregate. I don't think in any way that those rights are just suddenly evaporate because we're in the midst of a crisis at all. I mean, we still have due process. We still have your right to be free from illegal searches and seizures. All of these things are ingrained in our Constitution and in our body of law for very good reason. The founding fathers were sick of this stuff. They were tired of the government, which was Great Britain back at the time, saying that we had all these emergencies and we're fighting a war and we're doing all these things, so we can just put soldiers in your house. We can just come in and find whatever we want. We can just tax you and just sort of cause these changes anytime we want it to, because we're in the middle of a war, because we're the stronger power. We have all of these rights, and so they can be sort of tyrants to the submissive population. And just because we've got a virus, a pandemic, doesn't mean that we need to start giving up all of our rights and all of our freedoms just to sort of achieve some temporary safety. And there's a lot to be said about that. So I would certainly support journalists out there continuing to get the news. It's a critical part of our democracy, our republic. And if anybody is tampering down on that, if any journalist has been silenced as a result of anything that's going on, if anything, I don't know if I can represent you, but I'd be happy to have you on the show, be happy to talk to you about what's going on and have you share your story here. So that offer is absolutely available. The order from F equals had a question. F equals 1 over time. The order did not say anything about curfew specifically, not that I saw. It doesn't get into the details about that, but it does really clearly define what essential activities are and essential functions. And I think as long as you're doing one of those things, if it is an essential activity or an essential function, the time doesn't really matter. I mean, you can go to the grocery store at 11 p.m. if they're open. You can go do those things at whatever time as long as it's on that list. Do you think martial law will ever be used? That question comes from A. Han. I do not think that it will. I've heard a lot of those rumblings around. I think it would be extremely an overreaction to do that. I just don't see anything that justifies that. Martial law is an entirely different set of laws that basically the military uses, and they're a lot less protective of some of the same freedoms and constitutional privileges that you or I know that we grew up studying when we were learning about the United States in civics class. And it's a different type of law, and it's a lot more serious. It's a lot more strict. It's a lot more rigid. Things like due process and habeas corpus and all of these different things don't exist, to my understanding, under that level, under that type of law. But I just don't think it's necessary. If there's mass rioting, if there's mass looting, if we have civil unrest to the point where the traditional government structure just doesn't operate anymore, and we have to bring in military resources to kind of settle things down, then that would be necessary. But I don't see that anywhere even on the horizon. It just doesn't feel like that to me. I don't think that that's necessary, number one. Number two, I think it would be absolutely political suicide for whatever entity tried to do that. I mean, if a governor, the last I heard, it was Governor Newsom, who was kind of like floating the idea. He used that type of language at a press conference or something. If he did that, I think his political career would be over immediately. And so you always have that check on power. The people who vote always can pull out, dictators, people who would do something to that effect. And I think a lot of Americans are certainly apathetic. A lot of Americans will sort of follow along with what the government tells them to do, especially at a time like this when there's a lot of uncertainty. We really don't know who has the answers or what to do next. So if those people saw martial law be enacted, I don't think that they would be apathetic anymore. I think they'd wake a sleeping giant. People would be very upset, and that's not what the government wants. So I don't think that martial law is on the horizon. Thankfully, I think it is something that a lot of people are concerned about. I have seen a couple of these things come and go. Kind of around every election, there is always a contingent of people who say, "Well, this president's going to seize order and declare martial law and overrule the entire government, and they're going to use whatever the current crisis is as a basis for doing that." I've basically heard that every single time that a different president has been in office. Bush was going to do it both times. Obama was going to do it both times, and now Trump's going to do it. I just don't see it happening. I mean, it would cause a major wave. There are just way too many Americans who are way too weary of the government taking any more power than it has. And a lot of those people are armed and very vocal about what will happen if they try to take those things away from them. So I don't think that there's going to be martial law. F=1 over time also said, would the 2018 order cancel habeas corpus like martial law does? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It actually is very specific that it doesn't. It will not impede or interfere with anything that has any impact on constitutionally protected activities. That was on page 3 under paragraph 4, subsection F. It says engaging in constitutionally protected activities such as speech and religion, anything legal or court related is basically it's included. So you're good. That's part of an essential activity. I don't see the governor or anybody installing martial law or canceling habeas corpus. So, we're out there. Everybody's, we're all kind of trying to do our part, do what we can to help get ourselves, our families, our loved ones, our businesses through this situation. Executive Order 2020-18 came out today on March 30th, 2020. And we covered it today. We covered a lot. Quick reminder that the show is going to be live again on Wednesday for Watching the Watchers Wednesdays. The show is going to change time. We're going to start at 4 p.m. Arizona time. It's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we're going to move it up a good 3 hours so that I can speak to some people on the East Coast. We've got a lot of people who are very concerned about what we're seeing go on throughout the country. And we're going to continue to watch the watchers. That is anybody who is making decisions that can impact how we live our lives, things that are impacting our freedoms, our constitutionally protected rights. We want to hold them accountable, and that's what we do here on this show. So tune in this week on Wednesday, 4 p.m. If you haven't already, do me a favor, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, share this with a friend, have them tune in. That way we can continue this conversation. I've really appreciated everybody being active and being live in the chat. Some great questions today. Makes it kind of fun for me to know that people are interested in watching the show. So thanks for doing that. That's all that I have for today. I want to thank you once again for tuning in, and I appreciate everything.